A very good evening to every one of you who have joined this webinar. I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone on behalf of the Madras Chamber of Commerce. The Madras Chamber of Commerce and Industry is one of the oldest or the second oldest industry body in the country, having been formed in the year 1836. Even though it's nearly 184 years old, it's still a young and bubbling chamber which has ensured its relevance. One such endeavor the Chamber initiated 2 decades ago was to set up an arbitration and mediation center. This center has its own rules, panel of arbitrators. The services of the center has been utilized by the members of the Chamber. However, given that arbitration in India has been more ad hoc and less institutionalized, there has not been much progress. But in the recent times, there have been some legislative changes and judicial pronouncements which have been accelerating a shift towards institutional arbitration in India. The Chamber recognizes this and has taken up the process of revamping the arbitration center. Separate premises is being now set up for the arbitration center of the Madras Chamber. The premises should be functional very soon. And also to keep trend with the recent trend, to keep up with the recent trend, the rules have been updated of the center, providing for more digitalization and the way in which things are going more digital. The rules have been updated. The Chamber also has formed a governing council which will look into the day-to-day affairs of the arbitration and mediation center. As part of this effort, the Chamber also thought that it should have a series of webinars where it could promote institutional arbitration, in particular the Madras Chamber's Arbitration and Mediation Center. And it was decided then to have a monthly webinar on the law of arbitration and mediation. So in that, we begin our first monthly webinar today. We have a very prolific speaker who has in-depth knowledge in arbitration and also specializes in the field of arbitration. The topic also for today's webinar is of relevance given that, as I just mentioned, how institutional arbitration is catching up in India, or rather there's a move towards it. So the topic is also one of relevance. I'm sure it is going to be an enriching session for every one of you. With this, I will request Ms. Madhumati, the Registrar of the Madras Chamber's Arbitration and Mediation Center, to introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. I am pleased to introduce Mr. Tejas Karia, who is our first speaker in the series, which you're going to have every month, as you mentioned. Mr. Tejas Karia is a partner and heads the arbitration practice at Shardul Amarchand Mangal Das. He has wide experience in handling international and domestic commercial arbitrations across sectors, involving disputes relating to oil and gas, shareholders agreements, joint ventures, construction and infrastructure, insurance, real estate, and private equity. He has represented multinational and Indian corporations in ad hoc and institutional arbitrations involving major arbitration institutions like SAAC, LCIA, ICC, ICA, and ICADR seated in India, Paris, London, and Singapore. He's been part of the Committee of Law Commission of India for recommending amendments to the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. He's been ranked as a global leader by Who's Who Legal and Global Arbitration Review. He's also been recognized as a leading lawyer in dispute resolution by Asia Law Leading Lawyers, a dispute resolution star by Benchmark Litigation 2020, ranked in Legal 500 and Chambers and Partners for Arbitration. He is a member of the Governing Council of the Indian Law Society, SAAC Court of Arbitration, ICC Commission on Arbitration and ADR, Vice Chairman of Society of Construction Law, India, Director of Indian Arbitration Forum, Fellow of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and a Director of Indian Branch of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. He has co-authored a number of publications on arbitrations and spoken at various conferences and seminars on arbitrations. We are pleased to have you, Mr. Tejas, here. Over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anand Gopalan and Ms. Madhumati for that kind introduction. I'm pleased to be here today. It's an honor to be part of this webinar series, and especially this inaugural. I will be touching up the role of institutional arbitration. Now, as we all heard, the institutional arbitration is not popular in India. We will discuss that in detail. Is that why institutional arbitration is not has taken off in India? Because of various reasons. The perception mainly is that it is very costly and it takes a lot of involvement of an institution, whereas ad hoc is much easier. But if we examine it carefully, we have seen that institutional arbitration is much better than ad hoc arbitration. And the future of arbitration in India can be developed only if we promote institutional arbitration in India. So if we talk about today's presentation, I would like to discuss about the institutional arbitration. To start with, we will start with the role of institutional arbitration. So to give a broad outline of today's presentation, we will discuss firstly with regard to advantage of institutional arbitration, selection of arbitral institution at the time of drafting the arbitration agreement, because unless we decide the arbitral institution at the time of drafting the arbitration agreement itself, it is very difficult to agree to an institutional arbitration when the dispute arises, because when the dispute arises, parties don't agree on anything. So therefore, it is very important to keep this in mind when we enter the agreement only to include institutional arbitration there. We will then also discuss the recent developments to promote institutional arbitration in India and future of institutional arbitration in India. To begin with, we will see what are the advantages of institutional arbitration. Now, to understand the advantage of institutional arbitration, let us first start with the advantage of arbitration. Why do we select arbitration as a mode of dispute resolution? The first and foremost, according to this study which was conducted 2 years back by Queen Mary and Whiten case, the first and foremost consideration for choosing an arbitration is enforceability of awards. So the award is enforced as if it's a decree of the court. Of course, you can challenge the award, but the grounds of challenge are very, very limited. So once the award is passed by an arbitral tribunal, it gets enforced, and that is the reason why the arbitration is as good as the award. Because if the award is not enforceable, the whole process of arbitration is futile, because if the award is set aside, you have to start the whole process of arbitration all over again. It is not that the court can pass another award or court can replace an award with another judgment. So the only power given to the court is to set aside the award or enforce the award. So enforceability of award is very, very important. The other aspect of arbitration is also flexibility. You can select your own arbitrators, confidentiality and privacy, because you have commercial disputes. It's very important that the arbitrator, the facts are kept confidential. Neutrality of the arbitral institutions and the arbitrator, finality, speed, cost, and the other reasons. So these are the main advantage of arbitration. Now, if you see the divide between litigation and arbitration all over the world, the international arbitration almost takes 48% of the total dispute resolution. And together with other ADRs like conciliation and mediation, it is almost 49% of the total dispute resolution this thing. And apart from that, if you see the cross-border litigation and cross-border other litigation is very, very small, is around 4%. So arbitration plays a very major role in terms of dispute resolution. Now, as I was talking in the beginning, what are the advantages of institutional arbitration? If we compare institutional arbitration with ad hoc arbitration, the tribunal appointment in ad hoc is always by the courts, whereas in institutional arbitration, you have the ability for institution to appoint the arbitrator, because that saves a lot of time, to start with the arbitration process itself. In ad hoc arbitration, you don't have any administrative support, but in institution as like in Madras Chambers or any other institution, you have the secretarial support where you have the registrar, you have the counsels who are supporting the entire process of arbitration. That plays a very important role in the process of arbitration. Scrutiny of award. So the awards which are passed by the arbitrators are scrutinized by the institution in most of the arbitral institutions. That also ensures that the awards are enforceable and there are no typographical or other errors. Now, scrutiny doesn't mean that the award is changed by the institution. It is only if there are any typographical error. For example, when I was sitting as an arbitrator in ICC tribunal, the things like the interest is a compound interest or a simple interest, those kind of comments are made for consideration of the tribunal, and then the tribunal decides whether to accept that or not. So that is very important aspect. Speed, again, it is left to the arbitrator to determine the speed, but whereas you follow institutional rules, every rule has a timeline with regard to filing of any of the pleadings or passing of an award or any stage which is there are definite timelines. And as if you compare with ad hoc, the institutional arbitration is typically faster. Cost, if first instance you feel that ad hoc arbitration is cheaper because you don't have to pay additional institutional cost. But if you see in the long run, we have always in experience seen that the institutional arbitration comes to a much lower in terms of cost when as compared to ad hoc arbitration. Emergency arbitrator we will discuss later in detail, but for ad hoc you don't have an emergency arbitrator, whereas in institutional arbitration you have a facility of emergency arbitrator for granting interim measures. Now, I've already discussed about the advantages and disadvantages, but there are also certain advantages of ad hoc because you have a flexibility, the arbitrator can decide its own rules, and that is where the arbitration is ad hoc in most of the cases in India. But if you see the overall advantage of institutional arbitration, comparatively, institutions provide the expert panel of arbitrators. So if you have a specialist oil and gas arbitration or a construction dispute, you can get the best arbitrator who have the experience in dealing with those matters. It also is very important that the administrative burden of organizing everything in the arbitration process is taken away from the parties, and institution can take care of course, for fees, but it is worth spending those fees. And as I said, ensuring that the timely award is made and the award is scrutinized and it is in compliance with the applicable law and applicable rule also plays a major role in the arbitration process, which only institution can bring for the entire process of arbitration. We have done, like I personally speaking, I've done both ad hoc and institution, but there is a stark difference in the manner in which we do the arbitration and the outcome of the whole process, because institution is an integral part of an arbitration process where mostly people don't realize it at the time of entering the contract, but then that is the main problem which we are facing in India. Now, how do you choose an institution? So many times this question is asked to us, is that what is the manner in which you choose an institution? And there are various factors. There are factors like where the party is belonging from or where the performance of the contract would be, and you choose the seat and then also you choose the institution. Now, there are various options available for institutional arbitrations. For example, if there is an international commercial arbitration where one party is Indian, other is not Indian, you want to have an arbitration in Singapore, which is nearer to India and again a neutral venue and seat, you can select SIAC, and SIAC has been very active in India. They have been promoting institutional arbitration in India, and they have a lot of Indian members also in their court. I am one of the court members in SIA, and that is also a advantage, is that they are having arbitrators and the practitioners from all over the world in their entire process of governing, so they can get the best of the advise in running the arbitration process. Of course, there is a secretariat which is separate from the court, and they run day-to-day administration of the arbitration. Similarly, LCIA is very old institution. Is in London, and London Court of International Arbitration. They have their own rules, and they have quite a number of arbitrations also arising out of Indian parties. ICC is based out of Paris. They have offices also in Hong Kong and Singapore, and they are also very active in India. So ICC again is a very important institution. They also publish various studies. They've recently come up with the annual report of the arbitration, where there are a number of Indian parties having arbitration with ICC rules is increasing every year. Hong Kong International Arbitration is also another prominent institutional arbitration. Coming to India, Mumbai Center for International Arbitration, MCIA. In Delhi, we have Delhi International Arbitration Center. Indian Council of Arbitration is attached to FICCI. In Chennai, we have Dani Palkhiwala Arbitration Center and our own MCCI Arbitration Center. Now, all these arbitration centers are independent bodies. They are governed either by by their own rules, either they are society or attached to a chamber of commerce, where they have their own administration and setup. So there is no control as such, but they have their own rules to govern. So that is the very important aspect when you are choosing a institution. You have to first see how the rules are. If the rules are updated, whether the rules are having emergency arbitration, is there any fast track procedure? Is there any procedure for consolidation and joinder? Mr. Gopalan just told us that we are in process of also upgrading the MCCI rules, and we have the governing council. So quality of administration of the arbitration is extremely important while choosing an institution, because we need a neutral institution who is not biased towards any party and takes a neutral decisions, because even the appointment, the challenge to the arbitrations, the scrutiny, confidentiality, all these aspects of arbitrations are exclusively handled by the institution. Therefore, the reputation and previous experience in handling the arbitration matter a lot. Any new institution, you would see the first 5 years, it's very difficult to get cases, because firstly, you have to have the clause incorporating the rules of that particular institution in the contract, and subsequently the dispute should arise, and then there has to be a successful handling of those disputes by the institution. So that takes time, and that's a big investment, and therefore in India we don't have many international standard institutions where we can at least provide services to non-Indian, the arbitrations where they have nothing to do with India. Mostly the Indian institutions are providing services only to Indian parties or the domestic arbitrations. And we have to move towards the level where we reach the level of, say, SIAC, ICC, or LCIA. All this institutions started small, but with the number of years of experience and the trust which the parties have reposed in them, they are doing extremely well today. The other aspect of institutional arbitration is also cost and the duration. So as I said, it controls the cost and also time, because everything is as per the rules of institution. They have the schedule of fees. So the arbitrator is paid as per the total amount in dispute or the number of hours they spend. And that is very important, because on day one, you can know what is the arbitration going to cost in terms of the number of or the fees of the arbitrators and the cost of the institution. Many of these institutions have the calculator of the cost. So you put the amount in dispute and you get the total cost. So that is very good way to know that what is your arbitration going to cost, apart from the lawyer's cost, of course, which is you choose which lawyer you want to engage. But as far as arbitrators cost and institution cost, you know on day one. Whereas in ad hoc arbitration, it's completely unknown. It really depends on the fees fixed by the arbitrators themselves and the number of hearings it will take. And nowadays we have the fee per sessions. Even if you're having 2 sessions in a day, like 2 hours each, you would charge double the fees. per day. So that is something which we are grappling with in India in terms of controlling the cost. Duration also in India, we have Section 29A now, which puts a control on the ad hoc arbitration, but institutional arbitration again has the rules which will control the time which it takes. So if you see this survey, the number of users are using different institutions. So maximum cases are with ICC, then comes SIAC and LCIA, then you have Hong Kong International Arbitration Center and Stockholm Chamber. So if you see the institutions of the world where you have the international commercial arbitration, you won't find any Indian institution. And that is the aim we all have to achieve, is that we should have at least one or two Indian institutions in this kind of studies, where we can at least say that India also has a very strong base for institutional arbitration. If we see the number of arbitrations which are there from year on year, ICC had more number of cases in 2016, but in 2018, again, almost the same, around 800 cases. SIAC has less number of cases and LCIA has slightly less. So in comparison, ICC has more number of cases, and then comes SIAC and then LCIA. So this is the study which was conducted in 2018, but in 19 and 20 also this number of cases have increased over a period of time. Now the question may arise is, how long does it take? If we see the institutional arbitration and we add up to all the stages in the arbitration, and these are all the experience we have had from our own experience of the matters. SIAC had also published this data, and LCIA again, they published this data over a period of time. So normally, if you have a single arbitrator, sole arbitrator, it takes around 14 months from start to finish. And if you have 3-member tribunal in LCIA arbitration, it takes around 18 months. Whereas in SIAC, it takes 13 and 15.3. So on an average, if you see that 18 months is the average time if we have to do institutional arbitration, and which is very similar to the time we have in India now for completion of the arbitral process. In terms of cost, if you have a dispute of say $10 million, then the cost of ICC arbitration, including the arbitrator's fees and administrative fees, will be around 397,000, which is roughly around 4 crores. And if you see HKIS in SIAC is slightly less, it's around 298,000. And if you come to MCIA, it's almost 1/3. And that's the advantage of Indian institution, is that we can definitely provide the best quality arbitral service at much lesser cost. And that is the potential lies within India, is that we can develop world-class institutions and still do arbitration at much less cost because we have the talent available in India and also the great administrative capacity to do the arbitration in India. So if we compare with other institutions, we will go out and pay these fees. But when it comes to India, we don't agree that the Indian institution can deliver the same results as the other institution. But that is just a question of time. Now, as I said, SEEK plays a very important role in decision of institutions. If you're selecting London, it's always better to go with LCIA. Of course, you can have an ICC's rules and in the London seated arbitration, and you can have ICC rules for India's seated arbitration also. But mostly we have seen that if you are selecting Singapore, you will go to SIAC. Hong Kong is another seat which is very famous. You can not any longer, but these are the studies which are there for some time old. So HKIC, then you have New York seated arbitration there. You have AAA, American Arbitration Association, also is a very good arbitral institution. And Stockholm Chambers, again, is very famous arbitration chambers. Again, it is associated with the Chamber of Commerce there in Stockholm. Now, talking about the recent developments to promote institutional arbitration, there was a committee set up by the government under the chairmanship of Justice B.N. Srikrishna, and they gave the report, and that culminated in 2019 amendments. Now, in 2019 amendments, what was suggested by Justice Sri Krishna was Arbitration Promotion Council of India, just to promote institutional arbitration in India. But what has come up in 2019 amendment is that there is a part 1A has been added to the Act, and the section 43A to 43M has been added, which empowers the central government to establish an arbitration council of India. Now, the word promotion has been deleted in the actual amendment, which was suggested by the committee, has not been incorporated, and that gives a apprehension also that the entire ACI is to be appointed by central government, and that would lead to controlling the arbitration process in India. Now, what ACI is to do is to grade the arbitral institutions on the basis of criteria relating to infrastructure, quality and caliber of arbitrators, performance and compliance of time limits for disposal of domestic or international commercial arbitration. Now, therefore, all arbitral institutions in India would have to work towards achieving the proper infrastructure, physical and virtual both, in today's time, quality and best quality arbitrators who have the caliber to deliver the number of cases which can be handled by those institutions, and also experience in handling those cases. So this is something, this particular part 1A has not been notified, although these other parts of 2019 has been notified of the Amendment Act, but this particular aspect is still not come into force. So there is still time to improve the All Indian Arbitral Institution, which can be then successfully graded by the ACI. Now, the functions of ACI would include mainly to frame policies to grade arbitral institution, and also as per the 8th schedule, which provides the qualification of arbitrators, which is also not notified as yet, to ensure that the arbitrators are having those qualifications and the norms as specified. Also, it includes the role to evolve policy and guidelines for establishment, operation and maintenance of uniform professional standards in respect of all the matters relating to arbitration and ADR mechanism. So that also shows that ACI has a lot of responsibilities, but how they will achieve, we'll have to see, because this is all good, but ultimately we have to see that how the policy can be uniform, and all the institutions should have the same kind of standards, which will be laid down by the rule-making power given under the Act. ACI would have the power to make rules and regulations. It would also hold training workshop in areas of arbitration and establish and maintain an electronic depository of all the arbitral awards made in India. Now, the problem is that if they maintain the depository, the confidentiality could be breached, and there is some contradiction in the provision of confidentiality where ACI, although the confidentiality, when we go to that section we will discuss, is that the confidentiality obligation is imposed upon the arbitral institution, but not on Arbitration Council of India. The last object of ACI is to promote and encourage ADR mechanisms in India. Now, ACI has to take all such measures as it thinks necessary to promote and encourage arbitration and mediation and conciliation and other alternative dispute. So basically, ACI will be a regulator which would grade the arbitral institutions, and arbitral institutions then would really conduct the arbitration. And this is the idea of promoting institutional arbitration. Although the entire arbitration is a private mechanism which has a sanction under the Act, there is no regulator like ACI which is proposed under the 2019 amendment in any other jurisdiction. And we have seen so far is that there are a number of jurisdictions like London, UK, Singapore, US, who have been successfully conducting arbitration without there being any body like ACI. Although it will help to develop the framework of institutional arbitration, the best way is to promote institutional arbitration by spreading the awareness and making the world-class institution which can run on their own. there is no need to actually grade the arbitral institution. But since we have this body called ACI, which would then grade the arbitral institution, and perhaps that would also help to boost the institutional arbitration in India, which has taken a lot of time to progress over a period of time. The 8th schedule, which I was mentioning, stipulates 9 categories such as advocate, cost accountant, company secretary having say 10 years of experience, or a government officer in certain cases to be qualified as an arbitrator. Now, the problem is that there are a number of categories of people who are not mentioned in this 8th schedule. For example, a foreign lawyer, and if you are promoting institutional arbitration and international commercial arbitration in India, we would need to have a arbitrator of a choice of a party who is not an Indian national. Now, if you are qualifying this as an Indian advocate, then obviously other than those would not be qualified to become an arbitrator. But the answer to that is under section 11 also, that it says that in international commercial arbitration, the nationality and neutrality of arbitrator would also be looked into. So there are certain contradictions between the main sections of the Act and the 8th schedule with regard to the qualification of arbitrator. But as of now, the 8th schedule has not been notified along with the ACI provisions. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But definitely it gives some indication with regard to who can be the arbitrator. And it also allows some kind of standards to be maintained by the arbitrators in India. Again, this is a unique provision. In no other country other than India, we have this qualification of arbitrator, because party autonomy is paramount in arbitration and anybody can be the arbitrator. So you don't have such kind of qualification in any statute other than our own act under Arbitration and Conciliation Act. Appointment of an arbitrator. Now, in India, what we did in 2015 amendments as well as in 2019 amendments, we have given an opportunity to delegate the power of appointment in an ad hoc arbitration to arbitral institutions. So either Supreme Court in international commercial arbitration and high courts in domestic arbitration, they have power to delegate to a designated arbitral institution to appoint an arbitrator which has been graded by Arbitration Council of India. Now, the whole idea is to decongest court from appointment process. Normally, what happens when the parties are not able to agree on an arbitrator, which are to be appointed by mutual agreement, or if the party fails to appoint an arbitrator as per the agreed procedure, then we have this problem of not having an appointed arbitrator. And when you go to court, it takes around 6 to 9 months for the appointment process itself. When you have an institution, it can be done in a matter of days. In past also, Supreme Court delegated that power to MCIA to appoint an arbitrator in international commercial arbitration. So that power is always there with the High Court and Supreme Court. Now that has been specifically provided under Section 3A, is that once that part of the Act comes into existence, then all this appointment process will be done by the arbitral institution. So that would also give a lot of importance to the arbitral institutions to maintain a panel of arbitrator and also appoint the arbitrators in timely manner. As far as confidentiality is concerned, as I was mentioning, now we have Section 42A, which introduces the confidentiality, and it also includes the arbitral institutions to maintain the confidentiality. The only exception now is to award is necessary for purpose of enforcement of an award. So there are certain instances where the award needs to be disclosed. For example, challenge of the award, or for any other parties who are involved in the process of arbitration, for example, third-party funder, and all that would pose a challenge in view of the language of 42A. But arbitral institution is definitely covered, so it is very important now that the arbitral institution maintains confidentiality of the entire process of arbitration. Now, the another aspect which has been added by recent amendments is immunity to arbitrators. So long as the arbitrators are acting in a good faith, it would be they will be immune and there cannot be any action for any negligence by the arbitrators. The number of arbitral rules provide for such kind of provision. Now we have the provision under the Act itself, but it also gives a lot of security to the arbitrators and arbitral institutions, because then they are free to decide in a most independent way, and therefore this immunity will have a very good impact on the independence and impartiality of the entire arbitration process. Although the ad hoc arbitrations had the timelines, we have seen from 2015 onwards, the timeline started from the time of constitution of the arbitral tribunal, which continued up to 12 months, and the parties had power to extend by 6 months. Now with 2019 amendments, this timeline has been now the starting point for this timeline is not from the constitution but from completion of pleading, and the pleadings have to be completed as per section 23(4) within 6 months. So now instead of 18 months total time, we have now 24 months to conclude the entire arbitration process. As far as international commercial arbitration is concerned, it has been excluded. What was the proposal was to exclude institutional arbitration, because if the institution rules have their own timelines, there is actually no need to control, because the institution itself will control the timelines. But what the law now says is instead of institution arbitration, they are saying international commercial arbitration, because most of the time in international commercial arbitration is always by the institution, and that is the logic actually to exclude them from this timeline. But parties are requested to adhere to the same, although it's not binding on the parties as far as international commercial arbitration is concerned. The other development is also New Delhi International Arbitration Center has been, there is an act which has been passed. Earlier there was an ICADR, International Center for Alternative Dispute Resolution, which has its was constituted under a Societies Registration Act. That has been taken over, and now in Delhi, the government proposes to have a arbitral institution. This arbitral institution has been designated as an institute of national importance, and the central government also proposes to make contribution to the funds of this institution every financial year to give it as a financial fillip. But this has not taken a shape, although the idea is excellent, because it promotes institutional arbitration in India. It will also make India the hub for international commercial arbitration, and all other institutions in India will get benefit out of it. But as of now, although this act was passed last year, it is almost 1 year, but no progress has been done in the field of establishing this particular institution. Apart from this institution, the Act also proposes that there are two other bodies, namely Chamber of Arbitration will be set up, and a permanent panel of arbitration practitioners and an arbitration academy, which would be set up to impart training to the arbitrators and conduct research initiatives. So that is again a very good initiative by the government, but again we have to have a lot of bandwidth and ability to specialize in the field of arbitration and have full-time arbitrators who are able to do this kind of service to the institution of arbitration. Because institution arbitration can only have, of course there is a lot of reliance on former judges, and they are very good when it comes to delivering the awards, but at the same time you need experts to handle arbitrations. For example, you need chartered accountants, you need engineers who can really contribute to the field of arbitration with the training into the process of arbitration by these institutions, who can really make the arbitration world-class in India. Now, when we talk about future of institutional arbitration in India, I'm sure it's very bright, but there are a number of things which we need to do. First and foremost is to build confidence in Indian arbitral system. And that can only happen if the courts do not interfere with the arbitration process. Now we always see that the awards were challenged invariably. Now after the amendment that there is no automatic stay and you have to ask for a stay, and while granting the stay, court can impose condition of deposit of the amount awarded by the arbitral tribunal. We have seen drastic change or in approach of the parties to challenge each and every award. So that is a very good development which has happened in last few years. Arbitral tribunals also have to maintain a panel of arbitrators. Now, if you see CR, they have on their website, they published the panel of arbitrators. And if you see the experience, expertise, and qualification of those arbitrators, we have to achieve those levels in India as well. And there is a lot of talent pool, but we need to channelize that talent pool to kind of focus on arbitration as a full-time or at least as a main vocation where you can have the arbitrators who are experienced, having qualification and expertise in handling the arbitration process. Now, appointment process by the institution is also very important. Now, any other arbitral institution across, we get a very detailed form at the time of appointment, which will disclose each and every aspect with regard to the independence, impartiality, availability. So when we get a request for appointment as an arbitrator, we have to give our entire calendar for next 2 years to the institution, saying that you have the bandwidth and the time to do this arbitration. Also, they see the experience in the governing law. For example, if the arbitration is governed by English law or Indian law, then the arbitrator should have the experience in handling those. Pro-enforcement approach by the Indian courts. Again, the award should be enforceable, and Indian court should not kind of resist the enforcement of the awards. Normally, successful parties have to wait for a number of years to get the fruits of the award, and that is where somewhere there is a lack of trust in the Indian judicial system. And arbitral institutions can play a major role by producing awards which are enforceable. So if there are no mistakes, there is no grounds for challenge, all the procedures are taken care of by the institution as per its own rules, then the awards would become more enforceable. Multi-tier dispute resolution again is something we can consider, is that instead of going to court, you would have an appeal award by the tribunal itself, or there will be an appeal tribunal of the arbitrators where you can have multi-tier dispute resolution. Apart from that, you can also have the mediation and conciliation as a precondition for arbitration. So there are a number of institutions have both rules, mediation rules as well as arbitration. Even Madras Chamber has the arbitration, mediation and conciliation center, which would have separate rules, which would then make a arbitration much more easier, so that you have a hybrid system where you can do med or med. That is, you start with the arbitration and go for mediation and only come back to arbitration for unresolved dispute. Or you start with reverse, you go to mediation and then only come to arbitration for the remaining dispute. Emergency arbitration again is very important, because most of the time we have seen that a lot of litigation for interim relief before the court under Section 9 of the Arbitration Act. Now, when you need an urgent interim relief, the institution can set up an arbitral tribunal ad hoc, as called emergency arbitrator, who can then decide the interim relief in number of days. Now, most of the institutions have this facility. Unfortunately, it is not recognized by our Act. Although in 2015 and 19 recommendation, the definition of arbitral tribunal was recommended to be changed to include emergency arbitrator, but we have not had that kind of benefit. Now, what happens when we need an interim relief in an institutional arbitration, when the tribunal is not constituted and interim measures are required, such as freezing of assets or protecting the subject matter of arbitration, or granting a mandatory or prohibitive injunctions, all this can be granted by emergency arbitrator. Now, a party who wants an interim relief has to approach the institution, and an appointment is made within 24 to 60 hours, and we have seen it happening in front of us, that the emergency arbitrator is appointed the very next day by the institution, and the hearing happens within 14 days, and once the order is passed, the role of emergency arbitrator comes to an end. Now, there are various rules which provide for the time limit. For example, ICC says the order of emergency arbitrator will be made within 15 days. Similarly, under SIC and LCI also the time limit is 14 days. So that is that quick. Whereas in India, if you have to go to court, which since we don't have an emergency arbitration recognized by Indian court, of course, some of the institutions provide for emergency arbitrator, but if you go to court, it takes at least 2 to 3 months for getting the interim relief. Although you may get an ex parte relief, but then it is not a final order. It is only till the next date of hearing. So therefore, this is an important tool which is unique to institutional arbitration because only institution can appoint the emergency arbitrator. Now, as I said, in India, we don't have the recognition, but some of the Indian institutions like Delhi International Arbitration Center, ICA, MCIA, all of them, they have this institution rules which provide for emergency arbitration. So that is something we have to fix under the Act, is just to amend the definition of arbitral tribunal to include the emergency arbitrator. Now, as far as the enforceability of emergency arbitrators or orders are concerned, Indian courts have been very helpful. For example, Bombay High Court, in the case of HSBC, has converted the emergency arbitrators award into Section 9 order. And similarly, Delhi High Court in Raffles design also said that even if the Act does not provide for enforcement of interim award, the only method for enforcing is to convert under the Section 9 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. So to conclude, the future of institutional arbitration will really depend on the quality of institutions, the way they administer the cases, and we have to build the world-class arbitral institutions who ensure that the arbitral tribunals decide the entire arbitration within a time-bound manner. The award is made in time because number of times in ad hoc arbitration, we conclude the final hearing, the award don't come almost for 1 or 2 years. Of course, this is now taken care of by Section 29A, where you have to go to court for extension of time. And that is putting some pressure on the arbitral tribunals to pass award in time. But when you have an institution, they ensure that the awards are passed within time, and they follow up with the arbitral tribunal also for passing the award. The costs are capped because you know exactly how much cost it will take. Physical infrastructure is very important. Like MCCI, Mr. Gopalan said that it would have its own infrastructure, its own building. That would really help to have the gradation also of the institution, and in the physical as well as virtual infrastructure. Now, there is also talk in view of this pandemic is that whether the institution should provide the platform, which would be a secure where you can do all your online filing there, and also the video conferencing would also be provided by the arbitral institution by secure link, rather than relying on the outside platform. So that would again help a lot in terms of promoting institutional arbitration if this kind of logistical support is provided by the institution. And the technology, the help of technology and upgradation of the rules and the infrastructure would also go a long way in promoting institutional arbitration. So this would summarize the whole process of institutional arbitration in India and how we can promote the institutional arbitration in India by actually making use of it, because the advantages are tremendous, and definitely the future of arbitration lies in giving prominence to institutional arbitration. If you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer those questions from the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Tejas. Yes, there are questions for you. It's in the Q&A. If you want to switch it on, you could view it as well. And I'm going to read it out for the benefit of everyone. The first question that I think that came about is the restriction on the number of arbitrations that an arbitrator can have. Would it be applicable even for an institutional arbitration?
Yes. So the problem is that the Schedule 5 and Schedule 7 applies to the institution arbitration also. So therefore, if the institution arbitration is there, it is a duty of the institution to ensure that the provisions of Schedule 5 and 7 of the Arbitration Act has to be complied if the seat of arbitration is in India. But if the seat of arbitration is outside India, then those restrictions would not apply. And those number of arbitration restrictions would not be applicable to those arbitrators. But definitely, yes, if the seat of arbitration is in India, those restrictions would be applicable, even if the arbitration is institution.
Okay. The next question is, even if the arbitration clause in the agreement doesn't provide for an institutional arbitration, could it still be referred to an institution by the parties? I take it's with the consent of both parties.
Yes, yes. Mostly what happens is also that we have seen that if you go to court under Section 11, and while appointing the arbitrator or while delegating the power to appointment of an arbitrator institution, the courts also mostly encourage parties to refer the matter to institutional arbitration. And that happens very frequently in Delhi High Court, where the High Court encourages party to go to institutional arbitration, which is in the High Court premises itself, Delhi International Arbitration Center. Now, similarly, there are a number of other high courts which has the court annexed arbitration institutions, which has its own rules, and parties normally agree to that. We have also seen that after the dispute has arisen, number of parties have referred their matter to, say, ICC or CIAC institutions, and by way of an agreement, but it has to be in writing. So the agreement has to be in writing as per Section 7 of the Arbitration Act, if it is India-seated arbitration, or otherwise also by exchange of correspondence and all in writing. Anybody can refer to the dispute to an institution after the dispute arises, even if it is not there in the original arbitration agreement.
Thank you. The next question is, the qualifications laid down in the 8th schedule seem to indirectly bar foreign arbitrators' practice in India. Will this have any kind of implications, especially when India is criticized as a non-friendly arbitration jurisdiction by international community?
Yes, if I speak for myself, it is unfortunate that we are at least providing this kind of qualification. This qualification should be left to be decided by the institutions when they appoint the arbitrator. And for the parties to decide, if they want an arbitrator who is not having this qualification, it should be fine, because ultimately it is a choice of the virtue of the arbitration is that you can select your own arbitrator. And if you are barred from selecting a arbitrator just because the person is of not an Indian qualified lawyer in India, that should not be the idea. But my feeling is that although the intention of 8th schedule was to lay down minimum criteria, it does not preclude anybody from becoming an arbitrator. Although there is an inconsistency in the language of Schedule 8 and Section 12, but if we see the other sections, it also talks about independence and impartiality of arbitrators and neutrality of nationality. So if you talk about neutral nationality in an international commercial arbitration, then of course you can have an arbitrator who is for an Indian seated arbitration who is not an Indian national. That would be contrary to Schedule 8. So hopefully that would be taken care of. And even if you see the Act, it says 8th schedule can be amended. So it is not a final thing, and it is a delegated power where the 8th schedule can be easily amended. And in my view, does not bar the foreign qualified arbitrators or people who are not qualified lawyers in India. But yes, if you strictly read 8, it implies that the foreign qualified arbitrators would not be there. And if that is the case, there has already been criticism. In fact, when Lord Peter Goldsmith was here for an NPSC conference, he spoke about it openly, and it was widely publicized. So yes, it is a downside, but we are hopeful that by the time it is notified, this anomaly is rectified by the central government.
The next question is, can I seek interim relief under Section 9 in an Indian seated institutional arbitration whose rules already provide for emergency arbitration?
Yes, so the choice is always between the with the parties. So Section 9 is not precluded just because the institutional rule provide for emergency arbitrator. There is a Delhi High Court decision very recently where the party went for an emergency arbitration, lost there, and then filed Section 9. So court said, sorry, I will not entertain you because you should have made a choice at the beginning itself, rather than losing emergency arbitration and then coming in 9. So 9 cannot be a second attempt, but if you are selecting 9 as an alternative to emergency arbitration, that is permissible. You can come to court after being successful in emergency arbitration for enforcement. Because it is not recognized under Indian law, the courts have been helpful in converting the emergency arbitrators orders under Section 9, because now orders under 9 are orders, deemed orders of the court, and therefore you can enforce it as if it's an order of the court. So that is permissible, but you cannot have both. You go to emergency arbitration and then come under 9, but you can go to 9 first, or you can go to 9 after being successful in emergency arbitration.
Thank you, Tejas. I think for paucity of time, the last question is one of our attendees was curious to know, I think more of an inside news, whether you have anything on when the ACI is likely to be constituted.
No, so there are a lot of issues, as I said. The one is the constitution of ACI has been criticized a lot. Again, Schedule 8 has been criticized a lot. And with this COVID situation, I think the whole attention has been diverted. So even the New Delhi International Arbitration Center as well as ACI has not been formulated as of now. And it may take another minimum 6 months, according to me, because there is no such movement as of now, and the whole process is delayed because of the COVID situation. So I feel not before the end of this year, definitely.
Thank you, Tejas. With that, I would request hand over to Mr. Saraswati, the Secretary General of Madras Chamber, to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Oh, thanks a lot. Series on this audition from just because also get learning in the sense we are getting into arbitration in a more revived way and putting us in the context with the current amendments and the act. So that's a brilliant, very precise, very clear kind of presentation, I would say, telling about the future of arbitration is institutional arbitration. We are happy to know that and want that to be that way. But at the same time, the amendments and the challenges, when the advantages we have in terms of cost, time, and probably adoption of technology could be faster. We have also highlighted some of the challenges, and probably we also have to mature into these emergency arbitration, things like that. And an insider question was asked by Anand, and he had also answered. I also wanted to ask, so he had said it's going to take some time, the setting up of an arbitration council. So I presented very well the landscape of the institutional arbitration, Mr. Tejas, and I should especially mention, he not only agreed to give the first opening lecture being the opening batsman, but also has sounded or suggested to us the series of things which we are planning to have, as Mr. Anand mentioned at the beginning. Every first Thursday of every month, we are going to have this series continue around the same time. And this is the first thing, and it has set up the context very, very well. And thank you so much for being with us today, sparing your valuable time. And I should thank Anand Gopalan. What should I say? He motivated us, or he drives us to get into this whole thing. And I should be honest that it's because of his efforts, his support, that we had the confidence, though we were one of the first opening organizations or chambers to have this arbitration services introduced for the members. We thought it is time again for us to relook. That is the reason we have redone our whole rules, everything. We are also ready with the physical infrastructure. As you are emphasizing, we will be ready with that shortly. It's almost done. And we heard the registrar here. So we have things in place. And we look at it as one of the essential services for our members at the current context. As you mentioned, it's going to save a lot of time, a lot of money, and at the same time, trying to sort out issues between the members and between the business community as such. So this will be the first session, and the second session you can await on September 3rd, if I'm right. That is the first Thursday of next month, and we will shortly inform the topic. So thank you very much, Tejas. Thank you very much, Mr. Anand Gopalan, who had been the driving force. And thanks to all the participants. I know it's a bit late hours for anybody. Probably we are all getting into the new normal. So probably working from home, working digital, we are all tending to forget about time. In a way, it's good. Probably it's a little more different world we are getting into altogether now. Still, it's I should say a big thanks to all the participants who had joined and who had stayed back till the end. And my special thanks to my team who had put it, and my special wishes to Madhumati. She is the registrar. Probably this is the first program she's driving as a registrar. So all the best, Madhu. All the best, everyone. Have a safe day. A big thanks to one and all. Meet you again on September 3rd.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Tejas. Thanks, Mr. Anand.
Thank you.